The laugh echoed, sharp, careless, cutting through the room like glass. Papers froze midair, eyes darted away. He didn't just question her idea, he mocked her mind. "Smart talk," he said, smirking. "But let's keep things realistic." She didn't move, didn't blink, just looked straight through him, calm, steady, burning. What if silence could be stronger than shouting? What if dignity was the sharpest weapon of all? Her chest rose once, slow, steady. Then she spoke, voice smooth as steel. "Would you like me to prove it?" The room shifted. Chairs creaked. His smile faltered. He laughed again. Lighter this time. Uncertain. But she wasn't joking. Not this time. And in 60 seconds, everyone would know. The silence hung heavier than the insult. No one dared breathe. Every eye hid fear of choosing a side. He thought his title made him untouchable. But she knew power didn't always wear a suit. It sometimes wore composure. Her heart raced, but her voice was steady. The storm wasn't loud. It was waiting. He turned to the whiteboard, smirking, tossing out figures meant to confuse her. "Show us the logic," he said. She stepped forward, every step deliberate, echoing authority. She didn't flinch under his challenge. Instead, she picked up the marker, her reflection catching in the glass. This was no longer a meeting. It was a reckoning. Her first number hit like thunder. The formula flowed clean, sharp, undeniable. Words turned to proof. Proof turned to silence. The CEO, a 55-year-old white male, blinked. The team leaned forward. The ticking clock became applause in disguise. Confidence was no longer noise. It was math, truth, elegance, and time on her side. When she finished, she set the marker down softly. "That's 60 seconds, she said. No arrogance, no anger, just truth standing tall. The CEO's silence was louder than his laughter had been. Respect didn't need permission. It demanded recognition. Sometimes the loudest victory is spoken in calm tones. The challenge had been thrown, but the air still trembled with disbelief. He thought her confidence was arrogance, a mask to hide fear. Yet something in her silence unsettled him, like she had already seen this play before. The clock began ticking. 60 seconds. A test dressed as humiliation. But what if failure wasn't even an option? What if destiny had already decided who would own this room? She didn't chase their approval. She commanded it without asking. She began to speak. Calm, clear, each word a blade wrapped in silk. The data unfolded like a story only she could tell. Every number had meaning, every pause had weight. Eyes that once mocked now studied her with quiet respect. Eyes that once mocked now studied. The CEO shifted, no longer sure who was being evaluated. The seconds slipped away, but she didn't rush. Her power was in control. The ability to make time bend to her rhythm. He had given her a minute to fail. She turned it into a lesson on grace under fire. Whispers rippled through the team. Somewhere in that silence, his laughter had aged. Half a minute left. She ended her explanation with a question, not to seek approval, but to make them think. What if intelligence isn't about who speaks loudest, but who listens best? The words struck deeper than the math. They carried something raw, unteachable. Truth. The clock hit 60. She stopped mid-sentence. Perfect timing. The screen glowed behind her, final numbers proving everything he doubted. No mic drop, no applause, just the sound of realization filling the room. She didn't need their praise. She had rewritten the meaning of power in real time. Silence became the loudest sound in the room. The clock stopped mattering. What mattered was the look on his face, a man realizing control had slipped quietly from his hands. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her victory lived in their eyes, in the way the air felt heavier with respect. What if power isn't taken but revealed? What if truth only needs 60 seconds to shine? Her calm was louder than his laughter had ever been. He tried to smile, but it cracked halfway. His hands fiddled with a pen, desperate for something to control. She looked at him, not with anger, but with quiet grace that made his arrogance feel small. The others sensed the shift, too. Talia, they had underestimated, now stood as the center of gravity. Every room has one, and today it wasn't him. He cleared his throat, forcing words that fell heavy and hollow. "Impressive," he muttered, trying to sound amused. But the tone betrayed him, fear wrapped in pride. She nodded once, her silence saying everything his ego couldn't accept. Respect isn't something you grant. It's something you witness when truth refuses to bow. The team started taking notes again, not because he told them to, but because she had taught them something worth writing down. Power wasn't in titles or voices or seats at the head of the table. It was in calmness under pressure, in knowing who you are when someone tries to laugh you small. When the meeting ended, he stood last, slower than usual, quieter than ever. She gathered her notes, unhurried, graceful, untouchable. As she passed him, she offered a polite smile. No revenge, no bitterness, just balance restored. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply stands tall and walks away stronger. By the time she reached her desk, the whispers had already begun. Not the cruel kind, but the kind that travel fast when truth finally breaks silence. People spoke her name differently now. Softer, steadier, with a quiet awe. The same mouths that once doubted now carried respect like confession. Sometimes you don't need to announce change. It announces you. She sat down, hands trembling for the first time that day. Not from fear, from release. Power doesn't always roar in battle. Sometimes it trembles when peace finally arrives. Her screen glowed with new messages, meeting invites, acknowledgments, even an apology disguised as a follow-up. Funny how respect often wears the mask of professionalism. Meanwhile, behind the closed door of the corner office, the CEO stared at his reflection in the glass. His laughter replayed in his mind, now sounding foolish, empty. He wasn't angry at her anymore. He was angry at himself for needing to be proven wrong to see her worth. That's the cruelty of arrogance. It blinds before it humbles. He watched her from behind the glass wall later that afternoon, her calm presence commanding quiet respect. No speeches, no boasting. Just work done flawlessly. It hit him then. True intelligence doesn't demand the spotlight. It becomes it. He wasn't looking at an employee anymore. He was looking at the standard. When the day ended, she packed her things with quiet satisfaction. She didn't win a battle. She restored balance. The truth had a way of echoing beyond the moment. It lived in every changed glance, every softened tone, every silent apology no one dared to voice. Dignity had spoken and everyone heard it. The next morning felt different. The air carried an unspoken shift. Eyes that once skimmed past her now paused, unsure whether to greet her or apologize. Change doesn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it moves quietly from one heart to another, invisible but unstoppable. She walked in the same heels, same stride, but now the floor seemed to carry her name. Meetings began to sound different. Fewer interruptions, more listening. Her words now drew silence, not smirks. Even he, once too proud to share credit, paused before speaking when she did. The shift wasn't loud, it was graceful, like a room learning manners again. It's strange how one moment of truth can retrain an entire culture. During a break, a young intern approached her, nervous, eyes full of gratitude. "You don't know what that meant to me," she whispered. Talia smiled softly, remembering the sting of doubt she once carried. Inspiration doesn't shout. It passes through quiet moments like that, reshaping futures, one breath at a time. In his office, the CEO reread her project notes. For the first time, he didn't skim. He studied. Each line revealed the brilliance he once dismissed. Maybe that was the real lesson. Respect isn't given because of color, gender, or title. It's earned through truth. And sometimes, truth wears the face of the one you underestimated. That evening, Talia stayed late, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The skyline glowed beyond the glass, her reflection standing tall against it. She didn't need validation anymore. She had rewritten her own definition of success. Some victories don't come with applause. They come with peace. He couldn't sleep that night. The laughter echoed again, but this time it haunted him. He saw her calm face, her unwavering eyes, and the mirror of his own ignorance staring back. Power had blinded him, but humility was starting to see. Some lessons don't come through loss. They come through shame that turns into awareness. What if the real measure of leadership isn't control, but correction? The next morning he arrived early, earlier than anyone. For once, he wasn't there to command. He stood at her desk, holding a folder, rehearsing words that refused to sound right. Apologies aren't made of words. They're made of sincerity heavy enough to silence pride. When she entered, their eyes met. No tension, just quiet truth waiting to be spoken. He spoke softly, the arrogance gone. "You were right," he said. Simple words, but they carried the weight of years. She didn't smile or gloat. She simply nodded, acknowledging not victory, but growth. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the heaviness of being right alone. Later that day, he gathered the leadership team. This time she sat beside him, not below. He spoke of new beginnings, of inclusion, of the lessons that humility brings. No one interrupted, because everyone knew the truth. The company's tone had changed, and it began with a woman's quiet strength. Respect had found its rightful seat. As the meeting ended, she caught his glance. Not of guilt, but gratitude. The past couldn't be erased, but the future could be rewritten. She had turned a moment of prejudice into a story of transformation. Maybe that's what real power is, not proving someone wrong, but inspiring them to become better. Weeks passed, but the echo of that moment still lingered, not as tension, but as transformation. Meetings flowed differently now. People listened longer. They spoke with care. Her presence had become a quiet reminder that respect isn't a policy, is a choice. Sometimes, the greatest revolutions happen without noise. Just one person choosing to stand, and 1,000 watching how. She was offered a promotion soon after, not as a favor, but as recognition long overdue. When the CEO handed her the letter, there was no speech, no performance. Just two people who finally saw each other beyond titles and color. What once began with mockery now ended with mutual respect. Life has a way of humbling pride and crowning grace. Later, she walked through the same boardroom where it all began. The table still gleamed, the city still shimmered, but the energy felt new. Every scar, every doubt had turned into quiet strength. What if pain isn't punishment, but preparation? What if every insult is just an invitation to rise higher? She didn't just win. She transformed the space itself. That evening, she spoke to a group of interns, young, nervous, uncertain. She told them, when someone laughs at your intelligence, let them, because one day they'll hear that laugh echo back in regret. The room fell silent, inspired. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Truth had already become her language. As she stepped outside that night, city lights flickered below like stars she had earned. The wind carried the soft hum of change, not just in the company, but in herself. She had turned disrespect into power, silence into voice, and humiliation into history. Justice didn't shout that day. It whispered, but everyone heard it.